When a billionaire CEO offers shelter to a struggling single mom during a storm, their lives intertwine in unexpected ways. But as their connection deepens, dark family secrets emerge about his true parentage, murder, and a decades-long conspiracy that could destroy everything they've built together. Don't forget to subscribe to follow more gripping stories like this one, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from today. The rain pounded against the windows of Liam Hayes' Mercedes as he drove through downtown Boston. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the empty streets. Most people had enough sense to be inside on a night like this, but Liam always worked late. That's how he'd built Hayes Industries into a billion-dollar company by age 35. He was about to turn onto the highway when he saw her, a young woman standing at the bus stop, holding something wrapped in her coat. As he drove closer, he realized it was a baby. They were both soaking wet and she looked completely hopeless. Liam didn't usually stop for strangers. He'd learned the hard way that people usually wanted something from him, but something about this woman's face made him pull over. "Do you need a ride?" he called through the passenger window. The woman hesitated, clutching her baby tighter. "I don't know," she said. "I don't usually accept rides from strangers." Another flash of lightning made her jump. The baby started crying. "Look," said Liam, "I'm Liam Hayes. Now we're not strangers. It's dangerous to be out here with a baby in this storm. Please let me help." She looked at the sky, then at her crying baby, and finally nodded. "Thank you," she said, hurrying to the car. Once inside, she tried to calm the baby while water dripped from her clothes onto the leather seats. "I'm Naomi," she said. "Naomi Carter, and this is Micah." The baby had stopped crying and was now looking at Liam with big brown eyes. "Where can I take you?" Liam asked. Naomi's face crumpled. I don't know. We got evicted today. I was going to try to find a shelter, but everything's closed because of the storm." Liam gripped the steering wheel harder. He shouldn't get involved. He had a business trip to London tomorrow. He had board meetings and contracts to review. But he couldn't leave a mother and baby out in this weather. "I have a house," he said. "It's too big for just me. You can stay there until you figure things out." "Oh no, I couldn't," Naomi protested. "You don't know me. I could be anyone." "You're someone who needs help," Liam said simply, "and I have the means to provide it." He drove them to his mansion in Beacon Hill. Naomi's eyes widened as they pulled through the gates. "You live here alone?" "My parents wanted me to have a house befitting my position," he said, making air quotes. "Personally, I think it's ridiculous for one person." Inside, he showed them to one of the guest suites. "There are clean towels in the bathroom," he said, "and I can have some food delivered." "Thank you," Naomi said softly. "But why are you doing this?" Liam thought about his own mother, who had struggled to raise him alone until she met his stepfather. "Because someone once helped my mother when she needed it. Sometimes a little kindness can change everything." He ordered food, while Naomi got Micah settled. When she came downstairs, her hair was damp from the shower, and she wore clothes from the emergency supplies he kept for guests. "I hope Chinese food is okay," he said. It was the only place delivering in this weather. They sat in the kitchen, eating straight from the containers. Liam learned that Naomi had been studying at culinary school when she got pregnant. Her boyfriend left as soon as he found out. She'd tried to keep up with school while working, but it was too much. "I just couldn't do it all," she said, wiping away tears. "The babysitter costs more than I make at the diner. I got behind on rent, and today the landlord changed the locks." "What about family?" "My parents died in a car accident when I was 16. I lived with my grandmother until she passed last year. It's just me and Micah now." Liam's phone buzzed. His assistant reminding him about tomorrow's flight. "Listen," he said, "I have to go to London for business. I'll be gone about a week. Stay here, please. Use this time to rest and figure out your next steps." "I can't accept that," Naomi said. "It's too much. Consider it. Paying forward the kindness someone once showed my mother." He pulled out his keys and removed one from the ring. "This opens everything. The fridge will be stocked tomorrow. My housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, comes on Mondays and Thursdays. She can help you with anything you need." Naomi stared at the key in her hand. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll be here when I get back, so I'll know you're safe." She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. Later that night, as his driver took him to the airport, Liam wondered if he was crazy. He'd just given a stranger access to his home. But when he thought of Naomi's face in the rain, holding her baby close, he knew he'd made the right choice. He didn't realize it then, but that stormy night would change his life forever. Sometimes the biggest moments come disguised as simple acts of kindness, and sometimes, When you open your door to someone in need, you end up finding exactly what you've been missing. The plane took off into the storm, carrying Liam away from Boston. But his thoughts stayed behind, in a mansion that had never felt like home, with a woman and baby who might just change that. Mrs. Chen arrived the next morning to find Naomi in the kitchen, attempting to make breakfast with Micah in a makeshift sling. "Mr. Hayes called me," the housekeeper said, putting down her bags. "He said we have guests staying for a while." "I hope that's okay," Naomi said nervously. "He was very kind to take us in during the storm." Mrs. Chen smiled. "In 15 years, I've never seen him bring anyone here except his parents. And trust me, you're much nicer than them." She rolled up her sleeves. "Now let me show you where everything is and give me that baby while you eat. I haven't held a little one since my grandson moved to California." As the storm cleared and sunshine filled the kitchen, Naomi felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time: hope. She didn't know what would happen when Liam returned, but for now, she had shelter from the storm. And sometimes, that's all you need to begin again. In his hotel room in London, Liam found himself checking his phone more often than usual. Mrs. Chen had sent a photo of Micah playing with some old toys she'd found in the attic. The baby's smile was infectious, and Liam caught himself grinning at his phone during boring meetings. For the first time in years, he was actually looking forward to going home. He just wasn't sure what that meant. Liam's private jet landed at Boston Logan International Airport exactly 1 week after he'd left. The whole flight home, he'd felt unusually anxious. Would Naomi and Micah still be there? Had he made a huge mistake leaving strangers in his house? His driver, Robert, was waiting at arrivals. "Welcome back, Mr. Hayes," he said, taking Liam's bags. "Mrs. Chen asked me to tell you that dinner will be ready when you get home." Dinner? Liam couldn't remember the last time anyone had cooked dinner at his house. He usually ate at his office or ordered in. The moment he walked through his front door, he knew everything had changed. The house smelled like fresh bread and something savory cooking. He could hear music playing softly from the kitchen, and most surprisingly, the sound of laughter. Following the noise, he found Naomi at the stove, dancing with Micah on her hip, while Mrs. Chen chopped vegetables at the counter. Both women looked up when he entered. "Oh!" Naomi's face flushed. "Welcome home. I hope you don't mind. I love to cook, and your kitchen is amazing." "Mind?" Liam looked around his usually spotless, unused kitchen. There were toys on the floor, a high chair pulled up to the counter, and what looked like cookie dough rising on the windowsill. It should have bothered him. He liked everything in its place, but somehow it felt right. "Everything smells wonderful," he said. Mrs. Chen smiled knowingly. "Miss Naomi was a culinary student. She's been teaching me new recipes all week." "It's the least I could do," Naomi said quickly. "To thank you for your kindness. Please sit down. Dinner's almost ready." Liam couldn't remember the last time he'd eaten at his own kitchen table. Usually, he worked through meals in his study, but now he found himself sitting down while Naomi served a perfectly cooked chicken marsala with homemade pasta. "This is incredible," he said after the first bite. "You made this from scratch?" Naomi nodded, helping Micah with small pieces of pasta. "Cooking is my passion, or it was before everything happened." "Why did you stop?" "Culinary school is expensive. When I got pregnant, I had to choose between finishing school and keeping my baby." She kissed the top of Micah's head. It wasn't really a choice at all. Liam watched them together. He'd grown up with wealth, but his childhood home had never felt this warm. His parents were always too busy with charity galas and board meetings to cook or eat together. "What would you need to go back to school?" he asked suddenly. Naomi looked up, surprised. "Oh no, I couldn't ask for anything more. You've already done so much." "You didn't ask, I'm offering." Liam surprised himself with how much he wanted to help. Everyone deserves a chance to follow their dreams. "It's not just the tuition," Naomi said softly. "It's childcare, living expenses, time to study, all things that could be arranged." Liam found himself leaning forward. "Stay here. The house is too big for just me anyway. You could use the kitchen to practice, and Mrs. Chen already loves watching Micah." "It's true," Mrs. Chen chimed in, bouncing Micah on her knee. "This little one has stolen my heart." Tears filled Naomi's eyes. "Why would you do this for us? You barely know me." "Because," Liam paused, trying to understand it himself, "because for the first time in years, this place feels like a home." Later that night, after Naomi had put Micah to bed, she found Liam in his study. He was trying to work, but kept getting distracted by the sounds of life in his house. The soft lullaby Naomi sang to Micah, the distant hum of the dishwasher, the creak of floorboards as people moved about. "Can we talk?" Naomi asked from the doorway. Liam nodded, closing his laptop. "If I stay," she said carefully, "I need you to understand something. I'm not looking for a savior. I want to stand on my own feet." "I respect that," Liam replied. "Think of this as an investment in your future. When you're a famous chef, I'll be able to say I knew you when." Naomi smiled, but then grew serious again. "There's something else you should know. People might talk. A single mum living in your house, and they'll assume things. Let them talk." Liam was surprised by how little he cared about gossip. "I learned a long time ago that people will always find something to whisper about. Your family might not approve." "My family hasn't approved of anything I've done since I refused to marry the banker's daughter they picked out for me," he grinned. "Actually, that might be another point in your favor." Naomi laughed, and Liam realized he liked the sound, liked a lot of things that had changed in the past week. The next morning, Liam called the dean of the Culinary Institute. Being one of Boston's wealthiest businessmen had its advantages, like getting a late admission approved for the upcoming semester. When he told Naomi, she hugged him impulsively, then stepped back, embarrassed. "Sorry," she said. "I got carried away." "Don't be sorry." Liam found himself wishing the hug had lasted longer. "Just promise me one thing." "What's that?" "When you open your own restaurant, I get a lifetime of free meals." She laughed, her whole face lighting up. "Deal." Neither of them noticed Mrs. Chen watching from the doorway, smiling to herself. In 15 years, she'd never seen Mr. Hayes laugh like that. Maybe the storm had brought exactly what this cold house needed, a little warmth, a lot of love, and the sounds of family. But storm clouds were gathering on the horizon. That afternoon, Liam's mother called. "Darling," she said in her society voice, "I just had lunch with Barbara Winston. She tells me you have house guests." Liam sighed. The gossip was starting already. "Yes, Mother. I have friends staying with me." "Friends?" Her voice dripped with suspicion. "Since when do you have friends who need to live with you? Who is this woman, really? What does she want?" "Goodbye, Mother," Liam said firmly, hanging up. He looked out his study window to where Naomi was walking in the garden with Micah, pointing out flowers to him. The baby's delighted giggles floated up to the window. Let people talk, he thought. Some things were worth a little scandal. The annual Hayes Charity Gala was the biggest social event of the Boston season. Every year, Liam dreaded it, but as the CEO of Hayes Industries, he had to attend. This year felt different, though. For the first time, he actually wanted to go, because he was taking Naomi. "I can't wear this," Naomi said, staring at herself in the mirror. She was wearing a midnight blue designer gown that Liam had arranged to have delivered. "It probably costs more than my old apartment's yearly rent." "You look beautiful," Mrs. Chen said, adjusting the dress's flowing skirt. "Like a princess." Naomi touched the delicate silver necklace Liam had left outside her door that morning. "That's the problem. I'm not a princess. I'm a single mum who works as a waitress and lives on someone else's charity." "Is that what you think?" Liam asked from the doorway. He was wearing a black tuxedo that made him look even more handsome than usual. "That you're a charity case? Isn't that what everyone else thinks?" Naomi turned to face him. "I've seen the newspaper articles, Liam. Billionaire's mystery woman. Gold digger and baby move into Hayes Mansion." Liam's jaw tightened. He'd tried to keep those tabloids away from her. "Since when do you care what those vultures think?" "Since I realized this could hurt you, your reputation, your business. The only thing hurting me is watching you doubt yourself." Liam stepped closer, taking her hands in his. "You're strong, talented, and brave. You're going back to school next week to chase your dreams. That's not charity, that's determination." Tears threatened to ruin Naomi's makeup. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Your world is so different from mine. Then we'll make our own world." He squeezed her hands. "Together." Mrs. Chen cleared her throat. "I'll go check on Micah. My niece is watching him tonight, but I want to make sure he's settled." Once they were alone, Liam pulled Naomi closer. "We don't have to go if you don't want to." "No." She straightened her shoulders. "I'm tired of hiding. Let them see who I really am." The ballroom of the Boston Harbor Hotel sparkled with crystal chandeliers and wealthy guests in designer clothes. The moment Liam and Naomi entered, the whispers started. "That's her living in his house. With a baby, can you imagine? What does he see in her?" Liam kept his hand on the small of Naomi's back, guiding her through the crowd. Several business associates came over to shake hands. their wives giving Naomi cold, assessing looks. "Liam, darling," a sharp voice cut through the murmur of conversation. Victoria Hayes, Liam's mother, approached in a cloud of expensive perfume. "I was beginning to think you weren't coming." "Mother," Liam nodded stiffly. "You remember Naomi?" Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. "How could I forget? The whole city is talking about her." "Mrs. Hayes," Naomi said politely, "thank you for hosting such a beautiful event." "Yes, well, the Hayes family has certain standards to maintain." Victoria's gaze swept over Naomi's dress. "Speaking of standards, Liam, the board members are asking questions. Having some woman and her child living in your home is raising concerns about your judgment." "Mother," Liam's voice held a warning, "I'm just looking out for your interests, darling. After all, we wouldn't want anyone to take advantage of your generous nature." Naomi felt sick. "Excuse me," she whispered, pulling away from Liam. "I need some air." She hurried toward the terrace, trying to hold back tears. Behind her, she could hear Liam arguing with his mother. "That was completely unnecessary," he was saying. "What's unnecessary is you throwing away everything we've built for some gold-digging single mother," Victoria snapped. "Really, Liam, what would your father say?" "Dad would say to follow my heart," Liam shot back. "The same thing he did when he married you, despite his family's objections to your middle-class background. Or have you forgotten where you came from, Mother?" Victoria paled. "That was different." "No, it wasn't. But at least you used to understand what it meant to be judged by people who thought they were better than you." Out on the terrace, Naomi leaned against the railing, letting the cool night air dry her tears. Below, the lights of Boston Harbor twinkled like stars. "Don't let them see you cry," a voice said behind her. An elegant older woman joined her at the railing. "That's what they want." "I'm sorry, I don't—" "Margaret Whitmore," the woman introduced herself. "I was just like you 40 years ago when I married into the Whitmore shipping fortune. They called me a gold digger too. What did you do?" "I proved them wrong," Margaret smiled. "Built my own business, raised 3 children, and now I run half the charities in Boston, including this one." "But how did you handle the whispers, the judgment?" "By remembering that their opinions don't pay my bills or warm my bed at night." Margaret patted Naomi's hand. "The question is, dear, do you love him?" Naomi's heart skipped. We're not—" "Oh, please. I've known Liam since he was a boy. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." Before Naomi could respond, Liam appeared at the terrace doors. "There you are," he said, relieved. "Are you okay?" "She's just fine," Margaret said with a knowing smile. "We were having a lovely chat about what really matters in life. Weren't we, dear?" Naomi nodded, understanding dawning in her eyes. "Yes, we were. Good. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to remind Victoria Hayes that not all of us have forgotten what it's like to be the newcomer." Margaret swept back into the ballroom with purpose. "I'm sorry about my mother," Liam said, moving closer to Naomi. "Don't be. She helped me realize something." "What's that?" Naomi turned to face him, her heart pounding. "That I don't care what they think, I only care what you think. I think—" Liam reached up to brush a tear from her cheek. "I think you're the best thing that's ever happened to me." Inside, the orchestra began playing a slow song. The music drifted out to the terrace, wrapping around them like a warm breeze. "Dance with me." Liam held out his hand. Under the stars, with Boston Harbor as their witness, they swayed together. Neither of them noticed Victoria Hayes watching from the ballroom, her face a mask of disapproval, or Margaret Whitmore watching, too, with a satisfied smile. Sometimes the greatest love stories start with a storm, and sometimes weathering that storm together makes the love grow stronger. But the night wasn't over yet, and neither were the storms heading their way. The Monday after the gala, Liam arrived at his office to find his brother Marcus waiting for him. Marcus was everything Liam wasn't: flashy, aggressive, and always looking for shortcuts to success. "Little brother," Marcus said, sprawled in one of the leather chairs. "We need to talk about your situation." Liam set down his briefcase. "If this is about Naomi, this is about the company." Marcus leaned forward. "The board is concerned. How a stock dropped 5 points after those pictures of you and your charity case hit the society pages. Don't call her that." Liam's voice was quiet but dangerous. "What should I call her? The waitress playing princess in your mansion? The single mom who hit the lottery?" Marcus stood up. "Wake up, Liam. She's using you. Get out." "Not until you hear what I have to say." Marcus pulled out his phone. "Take a look at these." The screen showed surveillance photos. Naomi meeting with someone in a coffee shop. The man was Robert Chen, Mrs. Chen's son, and a lawyer known for handling high-profile divorce cases. She's been meeting with him twice a week, Marcus said. Planning something, don't you think? Liam's stomach churned, but he kept his voice steady. Robert is helping her apply for school loans. I asked him to. Is that what she told you? Marcus laughed. You always were too trusting, just like when Jessica cleaned out your bank account 2 years ago. This is different. No, it's worse. Because this time you're not just risking your heart. You're risking the company. The board is calling an emergency meeting tomorrow. They want to discuss your fitness to lead. After Marcus left, Liam sat at his desk staring at the photos. He trusted Naomi. He had to trust her, but doubt crept in like poison. At home that evening, he found Naomi in the kitchen, helping Micah with dinner. The baby squealed when he saw Liam reaching out with sticky hands. Someone missed you today. Naomi smiled, but it faded when she saw his face. What's wrong? Why didn't you tell me you were meeting with Robert Chen? Naomi's hand froze in the act of wiping Micah's face. Were you having me followed? Marcus had photos. Your brother is spying on me. Naomi's voice rose. And you're actually listening to him. I need to know what's going on, Naomi. What's going on is that I'm trying to get my life together. She picked up Micah, holding him close. Yes, I've been meeting with Robert. He's helping me look into custody rights. Micah's father suddenly showed up last week demanding visitation. Liam felt like he'd been punched. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't want to burden you with my problems. Tears filled her eyes. You've done so much already, and I knew if I told you you'd want to help to fix it like you fix everything. Is that so wrong? Yes, because I need to handle this myself. I need to know I can stand on my own 2 feet. Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway. I'll take Micah upstairs for his bath, she said quietly. Once they were alone, Naomi sank into a chair. His name is Derek, Micah's father. He saw the pictures from the gala and suddenly decided he wants to be a dad. She laughed bitterly. Actually, what he wants is money. He thinks I'm your girlfriend now, living the high life. Liam knelt beside her chair. I'm sorry, I should have trusted you. Yes, you should have. She wiped her eyes. But I should have told you too. I'm just not used to having someone to lean on. Well, get used to it. He took her hand. Because I'm not going anywhere. The board meeting tomorrow, you know about that? Mrs. Chen overheard Marcus on his phone in the driveway. They're trying to push you out because of me. Let them try. Liam squeezed her hand. Some things are more important than business. The next morning, Liam walked into the board meeting ready for battle, but he wasn't prepared for what he found. Marcus stood at the head of the table, next to their mother. Victoria Hayes smiled like a cat with cream. The board has already voted, she said. Marcus will be taking over as CEO temporarily until this situation resolves itself. You can't do this, Liam said. I built this company. No, darling. Your father built this company, and he'd be heartbroken to see you throwing it all away for some woman. Dad would be heartbroken to see what you've become. Liam looked around the table at the board members, avoiding his eyes. All of you. You're so worried about appearances that you've forgotten what this company stands for. We stand for excellence, Marcus said smoothly. For tradition, for family. Family? Liam laughed. Is that what you call this betrayal? This is for your own good, Victoria insisted. That woman is destroying everything we've built. That woman has shown me what real family looks like. Liam straightened his tie. And if you force me to choose between her and this company, you won't like my decision. He walked out, leaving silence behind him. In his office, his assistant Jane was waiting with tears in her eyes. They can't do this, she said. It's not right. No, it's not. Liam started gathering papers from his desk. But they're about to learn something about me they never knew. What's that? I'm not just my father's son. I'm also my mother's, the woman she used to be before she forgot where she came from. He smiled grimly. And I've been preparing for something like this for a long time. That night, as Liam told Naomi what had happened, she tried to leave again. This is all my fault, she said, packing Micah's things. I've ruined everything for you. No. Liam caught her hand, stopping her. You've shown me what's really important, and tomorrow, everyone's going to learn that crossing me was a very big mistake. What are you going to do? I'm going to take back what's mine. He pulled her close. And then I'm going to show the world that love is more powerful than money. But first, they had to survive the storm that was coming. Because Marcus wasn't just after the company, he was after revenge. And he had one more card to play. Derek, Micah's father, was waiting in the wings with a shocking announcement that would change everything. The press conference was Marcus's idea. He stood at the podium outside Hayes Industries headquarters, playing the concerned brother perfectly. It pains me to announce that my brother Liam is taking a temporary leave of absence to deal with personal matters, he told the crowd of reporters. As his family, we support his decision and will maintain the company's sterling reputation in his absence. Standing at the back of the crowd, Derek Coleman smiled. The designer suit he wore was new, a gift from Marcus Hayes, along with the prepared statement in his pocket. Who knew having a kid would finally pay off? But before Derek could step forward to make his rehearsed announcement, another voice cut through the crowd. "I'm afraid my brother is mistaken," Liam said, walking up to the podium. Naomi was beside him, head held high despite the camera flashes. "I'm not taking any leave of absence." Marcus's face tightened. "Liam, don't make this harder than it needs to be." "Oh, I'm just getting started." Liam pulled out a stack of papers. "These documents show that for the past year, someone has been embezzling company funds through offshore accounts. Would you like to explain that, Marcus?" The cameras started clicking faster. Marcus's face went pale. "Or perhaps Mother would like to explain why she authorized those transfers." Liam continued. "I've already sent copies to the SEC and the Board of Directors." Victoria Hayes pushed through the crowd. "You wouldn't dare expose your own family. You stopped being family the moment you tried to take my company." Liam's voice carried across the stunned crowd. "I've spent the past year gathering evidence, waiting for you to make your move. Did you really think I didn't know what you were planning?" "You ungrateful—" Victoria started, but her lawyer grabbed her arm, whispering urgently. Derek saw his chance slipping away. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Marcus had promised him a big payday if he helped destroy Liam's reputation. Time for Plan B. "What about your girlfriend's lies?" he shouted, pushing forward. "Ask her about the night Micah was conceived. Ask her who his father really is." Naomi's face went white. Liam stepped in front of her protectively, but she put a hand on his arm. "No," she said quietly. "It's time everyone knew the truth." She took the microphone, her hands shaking, but her voice strong. "My name is Naomi Carter. Yes, I'm a single mother. Yes, I'm living in Liam Hayes' house. And yes, Derek Coleman is listed on my son's birth certificate." She took a deep breath. "But what he won't tell you is that he was married when we met. He told me he was divorced. He told me he loved me. And when I got pregnant, he told me to get rid of it or he'd make me regret it." The reporters were scribbling frantically. Derek's smug smile faltered. "I chose my baby," Naomi continued. "I chose to start over with nothing rather than live with lies. And now that Liam Hayes is in my life, I'm choosing to stand beside him because he's shown me what real love and real family look like." "She's lying," Derek shouted. "Tell them about the money you demanded to keep quiet." "You mean these texts?" Liam held up his phone. "The ones where you asked Marcus for $50,000 to make up stories about Naomi. My security team is very thorough." Derek backed away, but two police officers were already moving through the crowd. "Mr. Coleman," one said, "we'd like to ask you some questions about your outstanding warrants in New Jersey." As Derek was led away in handcuffs, Marcus tried to slip away too, but Jane, Liam's assistant, blocked his path. "Going somewhere?" she asked sweetly. "The FBI agents would like to talk to you about those offshore accounts." Victoria Hayes watched her carefully. Built world crumbling. "Liam, please," she begged. "We can fix this. We're family." "No, Mother, family doesn't try to destroy each other." He looked at Naomi, who was holding his hand tightly. "Family stands by you no matter what. Family loves you for who you are, not what you can give them." The next few hours were a blur of police statements and reporter questions. By sunset, Marcus and Victoria were being questioned by federal agents. The board had already called an emergency meeting to reinstate Liam as CEO. At home that night, after Mrs. Chen had taken an exhausted Micah to bed, Liam and Naomi sat in the garden, where they'd spent so many evenings talking. "I'm sorry I couldn't tell you everything," Liam said. "I needed everyone to believe I was distracted by our relationship, so they wouldn't suspect I was investigating them." "I understand." Naomi leaned against him. "I just wish—" "What?" "I wish it wasn't all a distraction. These past few months living here with you, watching you with Micah, I started to hope." Liam turned to face her. "Naomi, none of that was fake. Yes, I let my family think they were succeeding in their plan to discredit me, but every moment with you and Micah was real. He took her hands in his. I love you, both of you. Tears spilled down Naomi's cheeks. I love you too, but are you sure? After everything that's happened, all the scandal, the only thing I'm not sure about is why we waited so long to admit it. He pulled her close, and under the stars, their first real kiss felt like coming home. Inside the house, Mrs. Chen peeked through the window and smiled. She pulled out her phone to cancel the job interviews she'd lined up, just in case things had gone badly. She had a feeling she'd be staying right where she was, watching this beautiful new family grow. But even as love bloomed in the garden, shadows lurked at the edges of their happiness, because Victoria Hayes hadn't spent 30 years clawing her way to the top of Boston society just to lose everything now. And she had one last secret that could shatter Liam's world completely. Victoria Hayes sat alone in her penthouse, surrounded by old photographs spread across her antique coffee table. Outside, rain pounded against the windows, another Boston storm. She picked up a particular photo, a much younger version of herself holding a baby, Liam. Her hands shook as she reached for the phone. Get me Margaret Whitmore, she told her secretary. It's urgent. Across town, Liam and Naomi were celebrating. The board had officially removed Marcus from any position in the company, and the federal investigation was uncovering more evidence every day. Life was finally settling into a happy rhythm. Try this, Naomi said, offering Liam a spoonful of sauce. She was practicing for her first major exam at culinary school. Liam closed his eyes. Perfect, like everything you make. Flatterer. She kissed him quickly. But flattery won't get you seconds until dinner's ready. Micah banged his sippy cup on his high chair, demanding attention. Da! Everyone froze. It was the first time he'd said it. Liam's eyes filled with tears as he looked at Naomi. I'm sorry, she whispered. We can tell him not to. No. Liam picked up Micah, holding him close. This is the best moment of my life. The doorbell rang, interrupting their family moment. Mrs. Chen answered it and came back looking worried. Mrs. Whitmore is here to see you, she said. She says it's important. Margaret Whitmore rarely made house calls. Something was wrong. Victoria came to see me, Margaret said once they were settled in Liam's study. She's planning to go to the press with something you need to know first. What else could she possibly say about me? Naomi asked. Not about you, dear. Margaret looked at Liam. About him, about his real father. Liam sat up straighter. What are you talking about? My father was Richard Hayes. No, said a voice from the doorway. Victoria stood there looking older and more tired than they'd ever seen her. He wasn't. Mother, what are you doing here? Something I should have done 35 years ago. Victoria came into the room clutching her designer purse like a shield. Tell you the truth. Victoria, Margaret warned, think carefully about this. I have to tell him, before the investigators find it in the old records. Victoria turned to her son. Liam, before I married Richard, I was engaged to someone else, someone who worked for the Hayes family, your real father. Liam felt like the room was spinning. What? His name was James Miller. He was the Hayes family's chauffeur. We were in love, but his family had been servants to the Hayes family for generations. When I got pregnant, Richard's parents offered me a choice. Marry Richard and give the baby the Hayes name or be cast out with nothing. You chose money over love, Naomi said softly. I chose survival, Victoria snapped. I was 22, pregnant and terrified. Richard was kind. He offered to raise the baby as his own. What happened to James? Liam asked, his voice hoarse. He died in a car accident 2 months before you were born. Victoria wiped away a tear. Richard became your father in every way that mattered. He loved you like his own. Why tell me? Now? Because the old records are being examined for the investigation. Someone will find out. I wanted you to hear it from me. Victoria straightened her shoulders. Go ahead. Hate me. I deserve it. But remember, everything I did to give you a better life. Liam stood up and walked to the window. Rain streaked down the glass, reminding him of the night he'd found Naomi at the bus stop. Another soul facing impossible choices. I don't hate you, he said finally, but I don't understand you either. You fought your way up from nothing, then spent your life looking down on others who were doing the same thing. I was trying to protect what I'd built, Victoria whispered. No, you were trying to forget who you used to be. Liam turned to face her. The woman who fell in love with a chauffeur would never have treated Naomi the way you did. Victoria looked at Naomi, really looked at her, maybe for the first time. You're right. I became everything I once despised. She took a deep breath. I'm sorry. To both of you. What happens now? Naomi asked. Now, Margaret said, standing. But as we get ahead of this story, we control the narrative. No, Liam said. No more secrets. No more controlling narratives. We tell the truth. The press will have a field day, Victoria warned. Let them. I'm proud to be James Miller's son. A man who loved someone enough to cross social boundaries. A man who would have chosen love over money. He walked over to Naomi and Micah, just like I'm proud to love this woman and be a father to her son. Victoria watched them together, her son with the woman she'd tried to drive away, and the grandson, who wasn't hers by blood but who had her son's heart. She thought of James, of their stolen moments and impossible dreams. I have something for you, she said, pulling an old envelope from her purse. Letters your father wrote to me, to you. I never had the courage to give them to you before. Liam took the envelope with trembling hands. Inside were dozens of yellowed pages, filled with a strong, clear handwriting. My dearest son, the first one began. I may never get to hold you, but know that you were born from love. Tears fell onto the paper. Naomi wrapped her arms around Liam while he read, offering silent support. There's something else, Victoria said quietly. James had a sister. She moved to Chicago after he died. You have family there. Cousins, nieces, nephews, people who've wondered about you for years. Why didn't you ever tell me? Because I was afraid you'd choose them over the Hayes name. Over me. Victoria stood up. I'll understand if you want nothing to do with me now. But please, get to know your father's family. Don't let my mistakes cost you that connection. As Victoria walked to the door, Micah called out, Gamma? She stopped, her hand on the doorknob. It was the first time he'd called her that. You're still my mother, Liam said, and he's still your grandson. We can't change the past, but we can choose a better future. Victoria nodded, too emotional to speak, and left quickly. Margaret smiled at them all. Well, I'd say that's enough drama for one evening, but knowing your family, there's probably more coming. She was right, because somewhere in Chicago, a family was about to receive a letter that would bring them to Boston. And with them would come new revelations, new challenges, and new chances for love to prove stronger than pride. Sarah Miller stood in front of the Hayes mansion, her heart pounding. At 65, she never thought she'd be standing here, about to meet her brother's only child, the boy James never got to hold, the nephew she'd wondered about for 35 years. Are you sure about this, Mom? Her daughter Rachel asked, squeezing her hand. We can still walk away. I've walked away once before, Sarah said. When James died, I let them keep his son. I won't walk away again. They rang the doorbell, and Mrs. Chen answered. Mr. Hayes is expecting you. Please, come in. The house was beautiful, but what caught Sarah's eye were the toys scattered across the floor and the sound of a baby laughing somewhere nearby. This wasn't the cold mansion she'd imagined. It was a home. Liam was waiting in the living room, Naomi beside him. The moment Sarah saw him, tears filled her eyes. He had James's eyes, his smile. You look just like him, she whispered. Liam stepped forward, uncertain. Aunt Sarah? She opened her arms and suddenly they were hugging, 35 years of separation melting away. I'm sorry, Sarah said through tears. I'm sorry we didn't fight harder to know you. You're here now, Liam said, his voice thick with emotion. Rachel watched them, then turned to Naomi. Hi, I'm Rachel. I guess I'm Liam's cousin. Welcome to our crazy family, Naomi smiled, bouncing Micah on her hip. Is this the little one I've heard about? Sarah asked, wiping her eyes. This is Micah, Liam said proudly. Our son. Sarah's eyes softened. James would have loved being a grandfather. He always said family was everything. Over dinner, Sarah shared stories about James. How he loved cars and could fix anything mechanical. How he wrote poetry in secret. How his laugh could fill a room. He was so excited about you, she told Liam. He had all these plans. He was going to teach you about cars, take you fishing. Victoria said he died in a car accident, Liam said quietly. Sarah's face darkened. That's what they wanted everyone to believe. What do you mean? James didn't die in an accident. He was murdered. The room went silent. Even Micah stopped playing with his food, sensing the tension. 2 months before you were born, Sarah continued. James was going to tell the Hayes family he wouldn't give you up. He had proof that old Mr. Hayes had been embezzling money, proof he was going to use as leverage. The night before he planned. To confront them, his brake lines were cut. No, Liam whispered. That's impossible. The police ruled it an accident, but I knew better. James had called me that night, told me everything. He said if anything happened to him, I should keep the proof safe. Sarah reached into her purse and pulled out an old flash drive. I've kept it all these years, waiting for the right time. Rachel touched her mother's arm. Mom, maybe we shouldn't... No more secrets, Sarah said firmly. James died trying to protect his son. It's time the truth came out. Naomi saw how pale Liam had become and took his hand. We don't have to do this now. Yes, we do. Liam squeezed her hand. I need to know everything. They moved to his study where Liam plugged in the flash drive. The files were old but clear. Detailed records of money laundering, tax evasion, and bribes going back 40 years. Richard Hayes' father, Liam said, reading through the documents. He was stealing from his own company. And now we know where Marcus learned his tricks, Naomi added. There's more, Sarah said. James kept a journal. He wrote about his relationship with Victoria, about the pressure the Hayes family put on them both. He knew they were capable of anything to protect their reputation. Did Victoria know? Liam asked. About the murder? I don't think so. She was young, scared, and they had her convinced marrying Richard was her only choice. Sarah's voice softened. James never blamed her. His last letter to her said he understood why she did what she did. Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway. I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's something on the news you need to see. They hurried to the living room, where the TV was showing breaking news. Victoria Hayes was being led out of her penthouse in handcuffs. Sources say Mrs. Hayes confessed to knowledge of crimes committed by her late father-in-law, the reporter was saying, including possible involvement in the death of James Miller 35 years ago. Oh my God, Naomi gasped. Liam was already reaching for his phone when it rang. It was Margaret Whitmore. Victoria came to me this morning, she said when he answered. She found old letters from your grandfather, threatening James. She's been carrying this guilt for years. When she learned the truth about your father's death, she couldn't stay silent anymore. She confessed to protect me, Liam realized, to keep the investigators from digging deeper into the past. She's trying to make things right in her own way. After he hung up, Liam sat heavily on the couch. Naomi sat beside him, while Sarah took his other side. What do you want to do? Naomi asked gently. I want to honor both my fathers, Liam said. Richard Hayes, who chose to love me as his own, and James Miller, who died trying to protect me. He looked at his aunt. Will you help me? There's so much I need to learn about who I really am. That's why we're here. Sarah smiled through tears. Family sticks together. Rachel, who had been quiet, suddenly spoke up. You know what this means, right? The Hayes name, the company. None of it was really yours to begin with. It was all built on lies. No, Liam said firmly. It was built by people who worked hard, like James Miller, like all the employees who give their best every day. He stood up. Tomorrow, I'm calling a press conference. We're going to rename the company. From now on, it will be the Miller Hayes Corporation, honoring both sides of my heritage. James would be so proud, Sarah whispered. Later that night, after Sarah and Rachel had gone to their hotel, Liam stood in Micah's room, watching him sleep. Your father would be proud too, Naomi said, wrapping her arms around him from behind. Which one? Both of them. And you're the best of both, Richard's kindness and James's courage. She turned him to face her. Just like Micah has the best of all of us. I love you, Liam said, pulling her close. You and Micah are the family I chose. Everything else, the money, the company, the names, it doesn't matter as long as I have you. Outside, another storm was brewing. But inside, surrounded by love both old and new, they were safe. Sometimes the families we're born into let us down, but the families we choose lift us up. And sometimes the truth, no matter how painful, sets us free to build something better. But the story wasn't over yet, because Victoria's confession had opened a door to the past that couldn't be closed, and through that door would come one final revelation that would test everything they thought they knew about love, loyalty, and the true meaning of family. The visiting room at the Suffolk County Jail wasn't where Victoria Hayes had imagined spending her morning. The orange jumpsuit clashed terribly with her pearl necklace, the only piece of jewelry they'd let her keep. When Liam walked in, she barely recognized him. He looked older somehow, like the weight of everything he'd learned had aged him overnight. You didn't have to do this, he said, sitting across from her. Confess. Take the blame. Yes, I did. Victoria's perfectly manicured hands twisted in her lap. There's something else you need to know, something I've never told anyone. Mother, please, let me say this while I still have the courage. She took a deep breath. The night James died, I was supposed to meet him. He'd called, said he had a plan for us to be together, but I never showed up. Liam leaned forward. Why not? Because Richard's father caught me leaving. He showed me papers, proof that James had another family. In Chicago, a wife, 2 small children. Tears filled Victoria's eyes. I believed him. I thought James had been lying to me all along. That's impossible. Aunt Sarah said James never married. I know that now. The papers were forged, but I didn't discover that until years later, after Richard's father died. Victoria wiped her eyes carefully. If I had met James that night, maybe he wouldn't have confronted the Hayes family alone. Maybe he'd still be alive. You can't know that. But I do know this. There's one more secret, one that could change everything. Victoria looked around nervously. James wasn't the only one who died because of Hayes family secrets. Before she could say more, a guard approached. Time's up, Mrs. Hayes. Mother, what are you talking about? Who else died? Victoria stood up. Go to the old Hayes summer house in Cape Cod. In the library, behind the painting of the lighthouse, there's a safe. The combination is your birthday. She touched his cheek through the barrier. Be careful who you trust. Even family can betray you. Back home, Liam found Naomi and Sarah in the kitchen, making lunch while Rachel played with Micah. We need to go to Cape Cod, he announced. Now? Naomi asked, concerned by his expression. Victoria said there's something we need to find. Something about another death in the family. Sarah put down the knife she was using. I'm coming with you. Me too, Rachel said. Mom, you've carried this burden long enough. Let us help. Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway. I'll watch Micah. Be careful. Storms are coming. The drive to Cape Cod was tense. Dark clouds gathered overhead as they pulled up to the old Hayes summer house. The Victorian mansion loomed over them, its weathered shingles grey against the stormy sky. I haven't been here since I was a kid, Liam said, unlocking the front door. Richard stopped coming after his father died. Inside, everything was covered in dust sheets. Their footsteps echoed on the hardwood floors as they made their way to the library. The painting Victoria had mentioned hung above the fireplace, a lonely lighthouse against a stormy sea. Behind it, just as she'd said, was a wall safe. Liam entered his birthday, and the safe clicked open. Inside was a single manila envelope. What is it? Naomi asked as he opened it. Letters, he said, pulling out yellowed papers. And photographs. The first photo showed a young woman with a baby. On the back was written, Elizabeth and Baby, 1988. That's 3 years after you were born, Sarah said, looking over his shoulder. Elizabeth Hayes, Liam read from one of the letters. Richard's sister. I never knew he had a sister. Because the family erased her, Rachel said, reading another letter. Look at this. She was going to expose the family's crimes. She had evidence about James's death. The next letter is from the family lawyer, Liam continued, dated a week later. It says Elizabeth and her baby died in a boating accident. His hands shook. But there's a note in Victoria's handwriting. It wasn't an accident. Thunder cracked outside, making them all jump. Elizabeth must have found the same evidence James did, Sarah said, and she met the same fate. But what happened to her baby? Naomi asked. Liam was reading the last letter, his face growing pale. The baby didn't die. According to this, the Hayes family paid someone to take her away, to hide her where no one would ever find her. Her? Rachel asked. The baby was a girl. Yes. Liam looked up, his eyes wide. A girl who would be about your age now. The room went silent, except for the rain pounding against the windows. Rachel touched the silver locket she always wore, the one her mother said had been left with her at the orphanage. Mom, Rachel's voice trembled. Is there something you need to tell me? Sarah sank into an old armchair, her face ashen. I thought I was protecting you. When James died and then Elizabeth, I was so scared they'd come for you too. What are you saying? Elizabeth brought you to me the night before she died. She knew they were coming for her. Sarah started crying. She made me promise to keep you safe, to never tell anyone who you really were. I'm Elizabeth's daughter, Rachel whispered. That means you're not my cousin, Liam said softly. You're my aunt. Outside, lightning split the sky. But the real thunder was the truth crashing through their lives, rearranging everything they thought they knew. Rachel touched the face in the photograph. Her mother, who had died trying to expose the truth, just like James. Just like so many secrets buried by the Hayes family's need for power. All these years, she said, I thought I was an orphan. But I had a whole family. You have a family now, Naomi said firmly, taking her hand. All of us. The question is, Liam said, gathering the evidence, what do we do with this information? Victoria's in jail, Marcus is under investigation, but there are still people out there who killed to keep these secrets. We do what my mother died trying to do, Rachel said, straightening her shoulders. We tell the truth, all of it. It could be dangerous, Sarah warned. Keeping secrets has already destroyed too many lives, Liam said. No more. But as they drove back to Boston through the storm, none of them noticed the black car following at a distance. Because some secrets refuse to stay buried, and some people will do anything to keep the past in the past, even kill again. The storm had followed them back to Boston, turning the afternoon dark as night. Liam's phone rang just as they pulled into his driveway. It was Margaret Whitmore. Don't go inside, she said urgently. Victoria just called me from jail. They're coming for the evidence. Who's coming? Liam asked, but the line went dead. Through the rain, they could see lights on in the house. Mrs. Chen always left the porch light on when they were out, but now every window blazed with light. Something's wrong, Naomi said. Mrs. Chen never leaves all the lights on. Micah, Liam breathed, reaching for the door handle. Wait, Sarah grabbed his arm. We need to call the police. But Rachel was already out of the car, running toward the house. My whole life was stolen by people trying to hide the truth, she said. I won't let them hurt that baby. They had no choice but to follow her. Liam unlocked the door quietly, and they crept inside. The house was silent. No baby sounds, no TV, nothing. Mrs. Chen, Naomi called softly. Micah. A muffled cry came from upstairs. They rushed up, following the sound to Micah's nursery. Mrs. Chen was tied to a chair, trying to speak through a gag, and standing by the window holding a sleeping Micah was Marcus. Hello, brother, he said. Or should I say nephew? Put him down, Liam growled. Now, is that any way to talk to your uncle? Marcus smiled, but his eyes were cold. Yes, I know everything. Victoria's confession led me to do some digging of my own. Imagine my surprise when I discovered that I'm not really a Hayes at all. My father was Richard's younger brother, the one they sent away because he was unstable. What do you want? Naomi asked, inching closer. What's rightfully mine? The company, the money, the power. It should all be mine. I'm the only true Hayes heir. You're insane, Rachel said. The Hayes fortune was built on murder and lies. And what a magnificent fortune it is. Marcus shifted Micah in his arms. Now here's what's going to happen. You're going to destroy all that evidence you found at the Cape House. Then you're going to sign over controlling interest in the company to me. Once that's done, I'll give you back your precious baby. Don't trust him, Sarah said. He's just like his father. He'll kill us all to keep his secrets. Ah, the wise aunt speaks. Marcus laughed. Did you know my father was the one who cut James Miller's brake lines? He taught me everything I know about protecting family interests. While Marcus was talking, no one noticed Mrs. Chen working her hands free. In one swift movement, she kicked the lamp beside her, plunging the room into darkness. What happened next was chaos. Naomi screamed. Someone hit the wall. Glass shattered. When Rachel found the light switch, Marcus was on the floor and Mrs. Chen was holding Micah. 20 years of martial arts training, she said calmly, rocking the crying baby. My father insisted all his children learn to defend themselves. Marcus started to get up, but Liam's foot on his chest stopped him. It's over, Liam said, already dialing the police. The truth is coming out, all of it. You don't understand, Marcus gasped. There are others. People who've protected Hayes' secrets for generations. They'll never let you expose them. As if to prove his point, footsteps thundered up the stairs. Men in dark suits appeared in the doorway, guns drawn. Give us the evidence, one demanded. Now. Looking for this? A new voice called from behind them. Margaret Whitmore stood in the hallway holding up her phone. I've been live streaming everything for the past 10 minutes. The police are already on their way and the whole internet just heard Marcus's confession. The men hesitated, looking at each other. Your choice, gentlemen, Margaret continued. Stay and face charges as conspirators in multiple murders or run while you still can. They ran. Marcus tried to follow, but Liam held him down. You're not going anywhere. Police sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Rachel took Micah from Mrs. Chen, holding him close while Naomi untied the housekeeper. I'm sorry, Mrs. Chen said. They surprised me when I was putting Micah down for his nap. You saved him. Naomi hugged her. You saved all of us. Sarah looked at Margaret. How did you know to come? Victoria called me again after the line went dead. She overheard Marcus's men in jail, planning everything. She may have made mistakes, but she's trying to make things right. The police arrived, flooding the house with blue and red lights. As they led Marcus away in handcuffs, he shouted back at them, "This isn't over. The Hayes family has powerful friends." "He's right," Margaret said once things had calmed down. "There are still people out there who want to keep these secrets buried. Then we'll face them together," Liam said, looking around at his strange, beautiful family. Naomi holding Micah, Rachel and Sarah standing strong despite their tears. Mrs. Chen with her hidden skills and fierce loyalty. The truth is stronger than their lies. Later that night, after the police had gone and Micah was finally asleep, they gathered in the kitchen. The storm outside was beginning to fade, but they could feel another one coming. The storm of publicity and revelations that would follow tomorrow's headlines. "I've been thinking," Liam said, looking at Rachel. "You're not just my aunt. You're Elizabeth's heir. Half of everything the Hayes family built belongs to you." Rachel shook her head. "I don't want their money. I just want justice. For my mother, for James, for everyone they hurt." "Then help me make it right," Liam said. "Help me turn the Hayes legacy into something good." "First," Naomi interrupted, "we need to deal with tomorrow. Once this story breaks, our lives will never be the same." "They already aren't," Sarah said softly. "But maybe that's a good thing. No more secrets, no more lies." Margaret stood up. "I'll help handle the press, but you should all get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." As their friends left, Liam and Naomi stood at the window, watching the storm clouds break apart to reveal stars. "Are you okay?" Naomi asked. "Finding out Marcus is really your uncle. Rachel is your aunt. It's a lot to take in." "I'm better." "Then okay," Liam pulled her close. "I finally know who I am, who my family is. And most importantly," he kissed her softly, "I know who I want to spend my life with." But upstairs, in Micah's room, a shadow moved past the window. Because Marcus was right. Some people would do anything to keep the past buried, and the most dangerous storm was still to come. The next morning would bring reporters, revelations, and one final, devastating secret that would change everything. Again. The morning newspapers screamed with headlines about the Hayes family scandal. Television crews camped outside the mansion's gates. But inside, an even bigger drama was unfolding. "She's gone," Liam said, holding Victoria's letter. "She broke out of jail last night." "How is that possible?" Naomi asked, bouncing a fussy Micah on her hip. "She had help?" Margaret Whitmore stood in the doorway, looking grave. "And you're not going to believe who helped her." Before she could explain, Mrs. Chen rushed in. "Someone's trying to break into the safe in your study." They ran upstairs, but when they reached the study, they stopped dead. Victoria Hayes stood by the open safe, but she wasn't alone. Next to her was an older man Liam had never seen before, but somehow knew immediately. "Hello, son," James Miller said softly. The room spun. Liam grabbed the doorframe for support. "This isn't possible. You're dead." "No," Victoria said, tears streaming down her face. "He's been alive all these years. The Hayes family faked his death, kept him prisoner to protect their secrets." "I don't understand," Sarah whispered, staring at her brother. "All this time?" James looked older, grayer, but his eyes were the same ones Liam saw in the mirror every day. "They caught me before I could expose their crimes. Gave me a choice. Disappear. Forever, or they'd kill you, Victoria, and our unborn child." "Where have you been?" Liam's voice cracked. "A private hospital in Switzerland. The Hayes family has kept me there for 35 years, under a false name." James stepped forward. "But when I saw the news about Victoria's confession, about you finding the truth, I knew it was time. Victoria broke me out," he continued, taking her hand. "She never stopped loving me, even after all these years." "I thought you were dead," Victoria said. "When I learned the truth last month, that they'd been keeping you alive all this time." She straightened her shoulders. "That's why I confessed. I knew it would create enough chaos for us to bring James home." Rachel stepped forward. "Did you know about my mother, about Elizabeth?" James's face darkened. "Elizabeth was my friend. She discovered where they were keeping me, was going to help me escape. When they killed her," he shook his head, "I didn't know about you until today. Another innocent life they destroyed." Suddenly, alarm bells rang through the house. On the security screens, they could see armed men breaking through the gates. "The Hayes family's cleanup crew," Victoria said grimly. "They're here to silence us all." "Not this time." Mrs. Chen pressed a button under Liam's desk. Metal shutters slid down over all the windows. I installed a few upgrades after last night. "We need to get out of here," Margaret said. "I have a safe house ready." "No more running," Liam said firmly. "No more hiding." He picked up his phone and dialed. "Jane, execute Protocol Phoenix." Within minutes, every screen in the study lit up with news broadcasts. The entire Hayes family history, every crime, every cover-up, every murder was being released to every major news outlet in the country. "I've spent years preparing for this," Liam explained. "Gathering evidence, building cases. One call from Jane, and it all goes public. The cleanup crew will still try to kill us," Victoria warned. "Let them try." Mrs. Chen pressed another button, and the study walls opened to reveal a hidden arsenal. "Like I said, upgrades. My father was a police captain in Hong Kong," she explained to their shocked faces. "He taught me more than just martial arts." The next hour was chaos. Gunshots, explosions, the cleanup crew trying to break in while Mrs. Chen's security systems kept them at bay. But in the middle of it all, something beautiful happened. Micah, watching James with curious eyes, reached out his little arms. "Dada?" James looked at his son, then at his grandson. 3 generations of Miller men, together at last. "May I?" he asked Naomi. She handed Micah to him, and the baby immediately snuggled into his grandfather's arms, even with bullets flying outside, even with their world crumbling and rebuilding around them. That moment was perfect. "This is what they could never destroy," Victoria said softly. "Love, family, truth." The police arrived in force, led by none other than Derek, Micah's biological father. "Consider this my redemption," he said as his SWAT team arrested the cleanup crew. "When Liam told me the truth about the Hayes family, about what they did to James, I knew I had to help." By sunset, it was over. The Hayes family's reign of terror, built on decades of lies and murder, had finally ended. The true story was spreading across the world, a story of love surviving impossible odds, of family bonds stronger than money and power, of truth finally setting everyone free. 1 month later, they gathered in the mansion's garden, the same garden where Liam had first kissed Naomi, where their love had grown despite every obstacle. "Ready?" he asked her, straightening his tie. Naomi smiled, radiant in her simple white dress. "I've been ready since that rainy night you gave me shelter." The garden was full of their real family now. James and Victoria, together at last, their love stronger for all it had survived. Sarah and Rachel, no longer hiding who they really were. Mrs. Chen, who had protected them all. Margaret Whitmore, who had helped orchestrate the truth's revelation. Even Derek, who had found his own redemption. And at the center of it all, Micah toddled down the aisle carrying the rings, his face beaming with joy. "Dearly beloved," the minister began, "we are gathered here to celebrate not just the union of 2 hearts, but the triumph of love over lies, of truth over deception, of family over fortune." As Liam and Naomi exchanged vows, a soft rain began to fall. Not a storm, this time, but a gentle spring shower, washing away the last shadows of the past. "You know what they say," James whispered to Victoria, holding her close. "The rain is God's blessing on a wedding day." "Or maybe," Victoria smiled through happy tears, "it's just reminding us how this all began, with a storm that brought 2 hearts together." The Hayes Empire was gone, replaced by the Miller-Hayes Foundation, dedicated to helping families in need, to giving shelter to those caught in life's storms. Because sometimes the greatest love stories start with a simple act of kindness. And sometimes the storms that threaten to destroy us end up leading us exactly where we need to be. "I love you," Liam said to his bride as they shared their first dance. "I love you too," Naomi replied. "All of you, our crazy, beautiful, complicated family." Above them, the clouds parted and a rainbow arched across the Boston sky, because after every storm, no matter how dark, the sun always finds a way to shine again. And love, real love, can weather any storm, even one that takes 35 years to pass. The end.